Don't
I'm
feel
not
me.
saying,
I didn't say that at all. I didn't say that at all. Play it back. I did not say that.
I'm not saying that you did. Be clear. I'm just saying we got to be careful for the people who are listening that we're not saying that those are that one leads to the other. That's all I'm saying. I'm not saying you said it. I'm saying for clarity for people to listen that we are not saying that at all. Now back to Charles's question. He said, "What about same-sex adoptions?" And how y'all feel about that? Somebody, what y'all think?
I don't care if they are same sex. I don't care if they are.
I'm with you.
I don't care if you know, if it's same sex, different nationality, it doesn't matter. As long as you love the child, then you love the child. I'm simply saying that you must understand that there's more to raising that child other than the financial stability that you can give them, that these children are not some type of, you know, prized possession of like a pet. Okay, they're not pets, they're children. And it just seems really odd and strange that we have this type of thing going on amongst the elite. Okay, that's all.
But here's my question, and I agree with you. I agree with you, Sunday. Here's my question: why aren't more African Americans adopting kids that look like us that are in the system?
Because unfortunately, we have a very high rate of abortion. Black people abort children a lot. We almost abort children as much as using birth control. We use it as birth control, to be honest, and that's a horrible thing, in my opinion. That's a horrible thing. So adopting is way out of the question if you look at the statistics on, you know, abortion. Nobody's adopting, they're aborting.
Well, I was going to say, based on that, it's like if you're aborting a child, then you're definitely not going to adopt a child. But I was going to answer JL's question as well as your question as well. I think both of you touched on it when Jared said, okay, well, hey, why aren't more blacks adopting? And you talked about the elitists. To me, that kind of answers the question. Resources dictate, in many cases, what you can and cannot do. So if I'm in a position to where financially I can adopt 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 kids, because at the end of the day, we understand there's a financial responsibility to do that. But if I'm in a position to where in many cases where a mother is home by herself, trying to take care of the 2 or 3 that she has, last thing on her mind is about adoption. You know what I mean? And it's not that she doesn't want to show love, because we know Black women are very nurturing. But at the end of the day, she's trying to feed her own. So she's not thinking about, okay, well, I need to go and see what kids are being in this home for me to go and adopt, because she's having struggles adopting her own. But if I have those resources, I don't know that it matters if you're Black, white. Well, I'll say this. Let me back up, and I may be wrong. I'm not a psychiatrist. I mentioned at the very beginning of the show that culture and genetics play a role. And I've heard many times people that look like us say, well, you know what? Yeah, you can raise a child however you want to raise a child, but genetics are strong. So you never know what you're going to get. So I've heard situations where people have adopted a child and a child has gone astray, and then they found out that their mom or dad was a certain way because genetics are strong. And I don't know if that plays into why Blacks don't do more adopting, because they understand that, hey, that's a strong factor in how this child may grow up, regardless of what I instill in them and what I teach them. And maybe other ethnic groups may not view it the same way. And that's just something I have heard many times. So that may also play into that.
I'm gonna take a quick, slightly different take on this because of the information that I've had, and 2 different takes real quick. One is that I think everybody in America understands there's adoption. You can adopt kids, but it's not promoted enough in the African American community as this is something that's sexy that you should be doing, right? Like encouragement, like you should be doing that. The other thing is the millennial generation that we live in now. My mom is one of 16. I'm gonna say that again, one of 16 from the same mom, same dad, not Rolling Stone. Same family. She started having babies at 19 and ended at 42. Same mom, same dad, 16. They don't make them like that no more.
Nah.
Nobody wants to do that, because when you look at the financial responsibility and the kids having kids younger at the age, they look at it as, once I get done with my kids, I'm done. Like I ain't got no responsibility. They don't care about the responsibility, but just within their circle, they're not thinking about outside of their 4 walls in their home. And that's the generation I think that we live in now. There's not a lot of people who want to take on 5, 6, 7, 8 kids. right? So they had 3 of their own, because right now the statistics is 2.5, right? You got 2 kids and a dog. That's the half a kid, right? And then
Yeah.
they don't want too much more outside of that. You know what I'm saying? So when you talk about adoption and doing it, everybody knows that there's a need for adoption. Everybody knows that they can adopt, right? However, the responsibility that it takes to what Sunday was talking about, this is not just a dog. This is a kid with a life and a soul. And it takes a lot of responsibility on that. And I don't think a lot of people want that responsibility in the day and age that we live here. Hence, one more little point. I think that a lot of people in our culture, though, that haven't been able to have kids, they would like to adopt, right? But that is few and far in between compared upon what is the need out there. I think there's a big, vast need of kids who need to be adopted who are African American, and there's just not a lot of people out there that want to take on that responsibility.
What does that say, though? I mean, what does that say? Because sadly, most of the kids, at least dealing with the Atlanta agencies, and that's my point of reference, that most of the kids in the system look like us. And
Sad.
I'm glad you said one thing that you said, that the awareness factor about adoption, it is not, we are not ignorant to that. We know that we can adopt. We know that it's an option for families. We also know that many families will choose to not adopt because of I want to have my own generation, my own seed, and not adopt because that kid is theoretically not of their body, of their loins, of their cells, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And I've heard that many times, that they'd rather have a kid that is theirs, and instead of bringing in a kid that needs to be adopted. So how do we, and this might be a different show, how do we get past that mindset? Because at the end of the day, our kids are suffering that are caught in the system, and they're even suffering after they age out of the system. Mm-hmm. Because a lot of our families are not going back into these defects, or into these organizations that have these kids, and mentoring them and showing them sort of love, even if it's on via a program or some sort of outreach. We're kind of just, and when I say we are speaking in general, leaving these kids there for the system to take care of, and then we complain when they get out and they're wayward. So maybe we should think about doing a show and giving awareness on adoptions and.
Well, you know what? I don't necessarily think it's about, putting out the awareness of adoption, because that's what Planned Parenthood offers. You know what I'm saying? And as I stated earlier, we always, not always, but we have a high percentage rate of abortions within our community, and they go through Planned Parenthood. Planned Parenthood talks about abortion and adoption, and they also give you condoms and some pills and stuff. But more so, to allude to Jared's point, establishing the big brother type of thing, 100 men of 100 black men, or those organizations, those nonprofit organizations, continue your efforts, continue your stepping up of your game for African American children that are orphans. You know what I'm saying? Spend your weekends with them, take them to a game, et cetera, et cetera. You can also be a foster parent, to children, where you can collectively house multiple children, at the same time, and the state pays you for it. So those type of things, if we continue to explore those things, but adoption may not always be the answer.
And I'm gonna unwrap this. You guys have said a lot, and I tried to jump in a couple of different times, but I didn't want to throw off anybody's flow. To everybody's point, so I think about, again, with the adoption versus just say the foster parent. I know a lot of people who are foster parents, but in foster parents, a check comes with being a foster parent. A check doesn't come with adoption, so that's a factor. One of you guys said something about, going back to Charles' point, when he mentioned about his mom being one of 16. My mom is not one of 16, but my grandmother was one of 21. So there was a time where children were assets and not liabilities. Children actually brought value to the family structure based on the things that they contributed to the house. They were working in the fields, they were cooking, they were looking after their siblings. Now it's a point to where a lot of the kids are viewed more so as liabilities. They're on the game, they're eating up the food, they're soaking up the AC. They aren't bringing any value to the family structure. So when you take that into mind, yes, I would have had 16 kids when I know those 16 kids were going to be responsible and take on the things that's going on with my family. But I'm not going to have 1 to 16 when I know my whole job and sole purpose is going to be to take care and provide of them. And they're not bringing anything. They don't want to clean the rooms with the 16. So I think a lot of those things play into it, and we could go into this all day. But
that's why this thing gets heated up, man, because when men talk,
you might want to listen.